Hello everybody, I'm the introverted astrologer and I do hope you're all doing very well. Thank you so much for your support and also for being such a lovely, courteous audience. I really enjoy reading your comments. Thank you for taking the time. I hope you've got my measure by now. I try to show you the genuine planetary picture of different situations, and I back my work up with quite a few charts and I use different methods. I try to be honest, and I don't personally like clickbait. Now, probably like many of you, I am fascinated by the predictions of various psychic mediums. I keep an open mind and I take all with a good pinch of salt. I personally go and check out the astrology charts to ascertain whether there might be anything in something that a particular psychic is forecasting. Some recent ones I've considered, for example, are whether Harry and Meghan might split up this year, or indeed whether the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer will soon be out of a job. I'm not sure that those things are going to take place, or at least not yet. But a prediction that I recently watched did pique my interest. It related to Donald Trump and to Elon Musk. And with one of the predictions in particular, I could see some weight in it. And it pulled together a few loose threads for me. I've identified those threads in my previous videos, but I hadn't brought them together and seen the potential of an unfolding scenario. So before I go any further, I must state that this video is for entertainment purposes only. We're going to be looking closely at somebody's behaviour and their close relationships. So please use your own discretion to decide whether there could be any weight to this psychic's forecast. Might it be that some inordinately wealthy people are profiting from their powerful positions in the world? That there may be an abuse of these positions, that their alliance or connection with each other is bringing this to fruit? Is there an exploitation going on? The psychic and near-death experiencer Debbie Griggs published her forecast for the coming year, and I'll put a link for that in the comments below. She was taking a closer look at Donald Trump and Elon Musk. She felt that there would be a split. Moreover, that Musk would go on to spill the beans over something that has taken place in the United States, something involving himself and Donald Trump. This revelation will not be in Trump's best interests. In fact, it won't be in Musk's interests either, but he won't care about that. The time span given for this exposure was approximately a 2-year period, i.e. this year or 2026. Let me show you why this has piqued my interest. I'll start off by showing you Trump's progressions. We're looking at a date of 15th of May. Trump's birth chart is in the centre and the progressed planets and points are placed around the outer edge in green. Now, progressions are a method whereby we move one day forward in our ephemeris for every 1 year of life that a person has lived. And I particularly want to draw your attention to the progressions which are involving Venus and Jupiter. Now, at the current time, these two progressed planets are pulling together around the area of 25 degrees of Libra. They are just minutes apart from each other. And it's said that when two progressed planets pull together in this way, they are describing a state within us as though we know how we are supposed to unfold at particular points in our life. And so the dynamic is internally driven. Venus and Jupiter together could be speaking of optimism in relationships, of a state of positive growth, deep contentment. But Venus can also say something about our values, and specifically she can also speak of our money, our finances. Too much Jupiter can speak of excess. We might be over-optimistic. We might take risks which are based on inflated visions. We could also have an ill-founded faith that everything will work out. Why am I raising the downside of Jupiter simply from this small combination? Well, there's more to come. Let's have a look at Trump's natal Jupiter. It's pretty powerful. There is this exact partile trine with his natal Uranus, so timing and good luck are possible. But Jupiter is in a stellium of bodies which are all stationary direct. When Trump was born, Neptune, Chiron and Jupiter were all about to change direction, and so they had slowed down and appeared to stop. This stationary direct motion is said to speak of a very powerful potency for the planets concerned. So Jupiter is important. If we also consider that progressed Jupiter is now within a 1 degree of making a square to Trump's natal Venus, then we know some part of the natal potential in Trump's chart is being perfected. There is this natal wider square between Venus and Jupiter, and this is describing part of the dynamic which Trump has been born with. So there can be a certain excess, a certain self-indulgence perhaps. There can also be shortcomings around ethics or morality because Jupiter is over-inflating Venus, so to speak. We are all born with different aspects, and there is a spectrum of possibilities as to how we will grow into them. Certainly this is showing us that Jupiter is very much alive in Trump's chart at the moment. Now, this double ignition is quite remarkable in itself, but we also know that transiting Jupiter is moving through the last few degrees of Gemini, and later this year, as it whizzes through much of Cancer, it will form a conjunction with Trump's Saturn and Venus. This contact that Jupiter makes is going to be a lengthy one because Jupiter will appear to turn backwards, and therefore it will return to this position again. In fact, transiting Jupiter is also going to square the natal Jupiter and the Chiron too. And so we really are seeing one heck of a lot of Jupiter this year. And a lot of these aspects are by square too. Squares can bring intensity and challenge. They're dynamic and tense, and there may be a certain compulsiveness too with the square, a feeling that our choices are limited and that we have very little option open to us. If we consider that Venus can represent money too, it has led me to question some of the seemingly arbitrary imposition of tariffs, only to have Trump reverse them within a very short time. I understand that a lot of eyes are on this issue because Trump's tariff policies have had a massive impact on stock markets. Trump's announcement on social media in April that this was a great time to buy has aroused some suspicion. The White House secretary has argued that this was simply Trump's art of the deal at work. Now, if there was any ground to these suspicions, would Trump be able to escape detection? Now, one of the problems with an excessive Jupiter is that we do overestimate. We might feel that we are under some almost God-given infallibility. Our judgment can be skewed. We are less likely to be considering consequences. Is Elon Musk's chart showing any similarities with these issues of overestimating and being over-optimistic? It certainly is. We have his birth chart in the centre, and his progressed planets are placed around the outer edge in green. If we pull into his progressed sun, it's at 27 degrees and 24 of Leo, and we can see that this means it is pulling closer and closer to a perfect square with his natal Jupiter. So he too is possibly subject to these same flaws of judgment, possibly a grandiose sense of self, feelings of entitlement. However, transits from Jupiter are less marked in Elon Musk's case, because it will pass over his sun, his ascendant and his Mercury in quick succession in a few months' time. But it won't retrograde over these positions or make very significant ongoing transits. And so his danger of a continued lack of good judgment is not as marked. There are also a few other transits that Trump's chart will be receiving in the near future. We're starting off by looking at the transits from Chiron. Chiron is moving through the later degrees of Aries now, and when it impacts a part of our chart, it can bring to the surface issues around shame, woundings, including wounds or damage that we may have sustained in childhood. There sometimes can be an embarrassment or shame with Chiron because it can highlight issues where we have got something wrong. It can expose our shortcomings as a way of bringing them to the surface so we can consider them. Sometimes Chiron too can highlight issues to do with our health. If we go into the energy of these transits from Chiron, the issues that are being reignited give us a chance to consider and potentially do some healing work on our wounds. However, we all have different levels of self-awareness. This is something that can vary significantly from one person to another, and it's not something that you can establish from the birth chart. This Chiron is going to continue squaring with Trump's natal Saturn, and it will also contact his Venus. So issues to do with inadequacies or shortcomings, oversensitivities could be dredged up. Chiron's square to Saturn and Venus will be in orb around May, June, and by July it will trine Trump's natal Mars before turning retrograde at the end of July. And so these 3 points are going to be aroused in an ongoing transit which will be around even through 2026 too. If we remember that Venus involves matters such as personal relationships, value systems, finances, we can see that this square with Trump's natal Venus could involve the exposure of shortcomings or wrong-footedness in these areas. Now I'm honing in on Chiron because we're having another emphasis here. This glyph is showing Trump's progressed Mars, and as you can see, it's pulling closer and closer to his natal Chiron. How is the combination of these two planets going to show up? As always, it's a range of possibilities, but our feelings of potency, our certainty in our own power, the ability to assert our will, these things may come under pressure. Our confidence in our actions is going to be placed under duress. We will likely have a great deal of personal energy with this combination, and we won't find it easy to back down. Our confidence in the actions that we take may fall under great pressure. We could find that perhaps our courage might be questioned, and this could be accompanied by feelings of anger on our part. It won't necessarily manifest in an external event bang at the point of exactitude, but the nearer it comes to being exact, the more likely it is to materialise in its nature. This combination becomes exact in September, October, and coupled with these Chiron transits which Trump will be experiencing, we can see that Chiron is another key player for Trump this year and next. Now, is there anything in Trump's upcoming transits or progressions that could be saying something about abrupt changes in his relationships with the world and with key people around him? Well, yes, there is. And this is because transiting Uranus is moving through the last degrees of Taurus and will soon enter Gemini. You might recall that transits from Uranus in 2024 were associated with Trump's felony conviction and an assassination attempt. And so Trump's natal Uranus does not always manifest in an easy or straightforward way. So over the course of June and July, this transiting Uranus is going to be less than a degree short of making a square with Trump's natal ascendant, and this too is going to be a lengthy transit. Now we know that Uranus is a disruptor. It can bring lightning fast changes. It is impossible to predict how it will manifest because it is essentially unpredictable. Now when transiting Uranus squares our ascendant, these lightning speed changes are possible, and so our old ways of living may not work for us anymore. Sometimes it is us that forces big change in our lives because we have a drive to break free of anything which is holding us back. Sometimes the change seems to manifest from the outside and rip through our life. It could be that the people we begin encountering now are very different to those that we have previously mixed with. This is because Uranus is square with the 7th house cusp too, and so we might find great pressure is placed on intimate personal relationships or marriage, although good relationships will withstand the pressure. If a close personal relationship has a lot of tension in it or is making us feel confined in some way, then we may choose to break away from it. I've already discussed some of Trump's other progressions in previous videos, so I won't recap on it, but suffice to say there is a lot of Mercury going on. We have the progressed Sun sextile with Mercury and progressed Mercury conjunct with natal Mars. I'll put the link for those videos in the description box. Now both Trump and Musk are not too far away from their June birthdays. So is there anything that we can see in their solar returns? Here we have Trump's solar return for 2025, the moment when the Sun returns to the exact position it was in at his birth. Some of the key themes this year include that high public visibility, the fulfilling of career ambitions, but there is also quite an unhappy emotional undertone to this chart. The moon is in its detriment in the sign of Capricorn, where it is less happy. If I pull you over to the right, you can also see that this moon opposes his natal Saturn and Venus. So although we do have that high public visibility, I'm not sure it's going to be that emotionally rewarding. Now I've also taken the liberty of adding a few of the asteroids that we might associate with truth. I'll list them together with their asteroid numbers, but we can see the asteroid called Truth itself is on the midheaven very tightly together with that Sun too. Now we could look at this two ways, because the midheaven is the part of us that the world can see. It's a very public place. Then it could be that something about our status, our professional reputation is being laid open to the public gaze, and that the truth of our professional conduct is revealed. This could be for better or for worse. So, for example, if Trump himself is determined to expose truth and bring it to the public gaze, then this would be the ideal year to do so. However, if there is a truth about Trump's conduct as president, then this too would be a year where this might leak out. I would only use asteroids as a footnote to the main story. I don't believe an asteroid in itself brings about major change, but they do have an uncanny synchronicity with the themes that are being promised by the main planetary players. If we pull over to the right, we can also see that the solar return Mars is quite closely square with the solar return Uranus, and that these align quite closely with the angles of Trump's chart. Now, Uranus and Mars energy together can exercise itself in different ways. I'm saying this because I seem to come across fresh predictions every month from psychics and astrologers alike about assassination attempts, and they have not really amounted to much. I would have to acknowledge, though, that Uranus and Mars together can sometimes speak of accidents or mishaps, but equally it can speak of an indomitable will that will not brook any interference. In fact, we can over-identify with our position so much that we feel our very ego is under threat, and we lash out in unwise and ill-considered ways. That too is possible. I must raise this particular aspect because it is being strengthened by being on Trump's natal angles. It will be important. I won't bring up Musk's solar return in this video, but I will put a link for my analysis of it in the comments below. For brevity, he had a tight moon conjunction on his ascendant, opposed by Pluto on the descendant, and he too had a very prominent Chiron. I did anticipate that Musk was going to probably encounter a lot of strain in his relationships with people around him. I have also previously taken a look at Trump and Musk's relationship with each other. The planetary picture suggested that much of their discussions may take place behind closed doors and be of a very private nature. I felt that their relationship with each other would come under the greatest strain between 2025 and 2026. Now, of course, because Trump is the President of the United States, the mundane chart of the United States, its own birth chart, should be showing corresponding tension or stress if the presidency itself is going to come under pressure. So I'm showing you the USA's independence chart, its Sibley chart, and we're looking at its progressed positions. They are very interesting because they are indeed flagging up issues around national leaders or people in power. The progressed sun at the moment is at around 20.5 degrees of Pisces, and this means that the progressed sun will soon be picking off parts of the square in the Sibley chart, quite a close square between Mars and Neptune. Initially, the progressed sun will pull closer to this Mars. This will become exact in 2026, and Sun and Mars together have many symbolisms. They do include anger, a conflict of will in a natal chart. This would also be one of the potential accident aspects. But I think we can deduce that leaders at this time are going to face considerable frustration trying to impose certain changes, and these might particularly relate to relationships with other countries because Mars is in the 7th house of foreign affairs. But we should also take note that this progressed sun will soon move on to oppose Neptune. Neptune is suggesting change, confusion, and this aspect will be pulling closer and closer later on in 2026. Because Neptune does represent confusion, a lack of direction, an erosion or an undermining, I wouldn't consider it fortunate for the progressed sun to be making this contact. This could also have the potential of bringing in a change of leadership. Those in top leadership positions may change under the fluidity and confusion that Neptune can bring in. I've taken the liberty of including the asteroid Pallas Athene in this slide because I want you to see how closely conjunct it is with the Sibley moon. The moon in this chart is telling us about the American people, and Pallas Athene is the goddess of war, but a very wise war. This asteroid is showing us a fight for what is right and a fight which is strategic and intelligent, and I do love to see the moon in a mundane chart strengthened in this way. It shows that ordinary people like you and I are equipped to stand their ground. Thank you for watching. I've tried to weave together the pertinent aspects and forecasts that I can see so that you can make your own minds up. We also need to place this against the wider backdrop of the Neptune-Saturn conjunction, which is almost exact in June and July, just round the corner. This aspect will actually become perfectly exact in February of 2026. And part of the reason why this is so interesting is because it falls on the IC of the United States chart. In mundane astrology, Saturn represents law, order, governance. And as you can imagine, Neptune can be very disorientating. It can dissolve and erode away at the foundation of something. Might we expect that the next couple of years are going to bring some interesting changes in the way that people are prepared to put up with existing law and order structures? It's possible. An alternative, of course, could be that governments around the world become influenced by more spiritual, compassionate, forward-thinking principles, an ethos which is for the betterment of mankind and less self-seeking. Wouldn't that be lovely? Until the next time, take very good care of yourselves, and God bless you and your loved ones, and keep you all safe.